Well, my name's Chad Taylor. With Sea Point Wealth Advisors out here in San Diego, California. Been doing it for 29 years. Been a CFP since 2005, I think it is, and have a personal financial planning degree from San Diego State University.
Diversified game. Learn how to start, run, and sustain your business.
Hey, it's Kellen, and today on Diversified Game, I got Chad Taylor, and he is a CFP. So when we're talking about money right now, this is not somebody who just decided to, hey, I'm going to do an interview, going to come online and give you my best, opinion. No, his has actually been tested, and that's like the hardest test that you can pass. So we're going to let Chad give us the game on where we are as not just personally how he got there, but even as a country, and he can give us some tips, and you guys can go reach out and see his links in the description when you want professional help. Chad, thank you for coming on. I'd love to start with just kind of your journey. I know to you, you've said it 100 times and you've lived it for the last 20 years, and your 4 kids and wife have heard it all. But if you could just let people know where you started on your journey and why you decided to do this, because this is not the sexy stuff. This isn't like the other Chad Taylor who's playing the guitar, who, might kill you in the SEO algorithm. So give us the game, please.
Yeah, I think that guy was he was a juggler with flaming bowling balls or something like that. But yeah, I know who you're talking about. I've seen him on the search engine several times. So, I've been doing this. I've been in the financial planning business since 1997. Really, 1998 is when I got my license with Merrill Lynch in Dallas, Texas. Um, and I got it. I really got in this business because of how I grew up and where I grew up. I grew up outside of a small little town outside Omaha, Nebraska, on the Iowa side of the river. And we were lower income, middle class. My mom stayed home, which was great. My dad worked for UPS, and probably never made more than $25,000-$30,000 a year, right? And so, um, we didn't want for anything when we were growing up, but we weren't living a lavish lifestyle. Our family vacation was to Worlds of Fun for a day, and where, if we were lucky, maybe we went for 2 days, right? And so I wanted to learn about money, and when I grew up, wanted to be in a different situation for myself personally, so where I had more stuff available to me and to my kids. And so, even from a young age, I'd pick up the Forbes magazine or the Kiplinger magazine and read about, the markets and investing. And so I knew when I was, done playing, a year of college football, I wanted to stay in the college and get my degree in finance and business. And ended up at Texas State University, south of Austin in San Marcos, and got my business degree. I'm very, fortunate, as I was, starting in the business. I got an interview with Merrill Lynch in Dallas, like I mentioned, in Dallas, Texas. And, the guy put me through the ringer. He had me go through 6 or 7 interviews with him, redo a business plan, and just to see if I would keep coming back. Like his whole thing was, are you going to come back? Are you going to work hard? And I did. And, I didn't know what I was doing. I was 23 years old, getting in the financial planning business. Nobody's going to trust me with their money because I'm straight out of college. But I was very fortunate. He was able to put me with a good mentor back then, and name was Dodie Crockett, who was one of the top financial female advisors at Merrill Lynch at the time. And, she had books written about her and how she had built her business and how she worked with clients, and how she took care of her clients. And so working with her, for me, was like getting a master's in financial planning because she was the best. And so as I was new in the business and bringing in clients and meeting with clients, she would sit down with me and teach me, like, hey, here's how you build out a financial plan. Here's how you build out an investment portfolio. And so it was a great way for me to learn and get in the business. But I got into it, to kind of answer your question, I got into it because I wanted to learn about money and grow up with a different lifestyle than I did when I was young.
You've tried it your way, but you're still in debt. Or maybe you're doing okay, but want to invest smarter, grow faster. MillionaireX.ai gives you real step-by-step strategies to ditch debt or stack wealth. Stop dreaming and start planning. Visit MillionaireX.ai today. I want you to be the next millionaire next door.
And Ed, how long did you work for other people until you said I want to branch out and do my own thing, because now we're in such a microwave or air fryer, Ninja air fryer. There's your free commercial. Generation where people just want it quick. We have, kids going to college who never plan on
Yeah.
working for anybody. And, so how long, and, that mentorship, talk about that for the person who's listening so they can say, okay, let me not just jump out of school maybe and try something and be the next Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, my manager at the time, a guy named Jim Senstrup, who was awesome. He would call us the new guys. And what was his word? We were incompetently incompetent. So, you know enough to be dangerous, right? And after I think a few years, he started calling us competently incompetent, to where we know what we're doing, but we're not there yet. And so I worked for Doty for 3 years, where I knew what I was doing, but I didn't have the experience that she had. And I could do the meetings, I could build the portfolios, but I still need to rely on her for the first 3 years. I got recruited heavily because I did work for her, and I got fortunate again. I got recruited by a company in long story. I'll make a long story short there, but I got recruited a company in California, and they moved me to San Diego. And I got partnered with another mentor, and I worked with him for about 5 more years. So call it maybe, a total of 8, 9 years before I was saying, okay, I'm confident enough where I can go out there, I can go do this and talk to anybody and explain how we're going to build this portfolio. So, it was a good, 8, 9 years of working with people and learning from them and watching them do it and listen to how they answer certain situations before I felt really, really comfortable to go out and, build this on my own.
And then when you did build it on your own, did you bootstrap it? Did you go look for angels, partners? A lot of times people might, even in government contracting, they say, hey, I'm going to do a joint venture with someone. And these are clients of ours. And I say, you might not want to do that. One, you don't play well with others. Two, you don't know what the heck you're doing. This is your first one. How did your journey? Was it all just kind of on you?
Yeah, I mean, because our business is a little different, right? We're working with individual clients, small businesses, and so there are some joint ventures, as you'd say, you can go out there and do, and partner with another advisor and be a team, right? And I did do that a little later on, where I kind of took on a younger guy to be part of my group, and it, didn't work out that well at the time. But for the most part, you're on your own, going out there and trying to get your clients and get people to trust you and invest with you and be, part of your team, your investment team, where you're going to work with them and build a financial plan and hopefully take them to a successful future for their retirement, right? And so, after I was kind of done with that group of kind of being, the mentee, I was really on my own. And, it doesn't mean I shouldn't say I'm on my own, because you have resources, right? We have, attorneys we work with, and we have estate planning attorneys, we have CPAs. And so we have resources to go to for complicated situations. But for the most part, when I wanted to be my own advisor, my own, financial planning firm, even back when I was in the UBS days, it's really, you're on your own. You're out there doing it yourself, you're getting your clients, you're going out and trying to find new clients. So yeah, I'd say most of the part, when after that I was on my own, and building the business.
Okay. And now that we got all that out the way, can you let the people know what, before we get into how you can make everybody a billionaire or the first world's trillionaire with AI, right? Let the people know what is like the number one mistake, because you deal with high earners, people who already have their stuff together, defined benefit plans. They might already be there. You might get them into that type of stuff. What's the number one mistake that you're seeing people who know how to deal with money or have some money? What are they doing that you could say, oh, this again, I wish I could teach this in, elementary school, so you wouldn't be here now?
Yeah, there's a few things actually. The first one's fear and greed, right? We get short-term noise, right? Like we're dealing with this with the Iran war, right? The market's selling off, the market corrected 10%, and we make long-term decisions with our investments based on short-term noise. And that never really works out well. You got to just ignore what's going on in the markets, and stick to a plan and follow your game plan. Doesn't mean you don't make changes or do little things here and there. But when people get scared and they pull the money out of the market because we just dropped 10%, and then they miss the rally coming back, you'll never ever be successful as an investor that way. That's probably the biggest one. The other one, it's failure to plan. You don't have a good game plan in place to figure out what your end game is, right? And so you're making decisions based off of, today when you don't really have a game plan to get where you want to go. And the other one I think is, people get too tied up on the investments. It's like, okay, what is the investment we're doing? In reality, people rarely fail because they pick the wrong investment. They fail because they don't have the game plan. If you're with a good advisor and your advisor's picking fund ABC and I'm picking fund XYZ, for the most part, we're going to be in the same ballpark 10 years from now. That's not going to cause you to not meet your numbers. It's the stuff around it, psychology and trying to time the market and not, sticking with your game plan is what causes people to fail.
Okay. Okay. And when you talk about that short-term noise, have you ever seen any data? Is there a correlation between, people who want to jump in and out of the market or switch over and say, oh, this isn't working because there's a war, when I think because of like the Dave Ramseys and the Warren Buffetts, things are on a discount when things go down. But is there any correlation between that and like our divorce rates where people are just, hey, it's not going good, I'm out of here?
I don't know about that one. I mean, I do know, like, fortunately, knock on wood, I don't have a lot of clients that have been divorced, but, a lot of that is, arguments about money, right? But I don't think that's coming from, trying to time the market being in and out. I think that's, more of just, spending issues and anything else, lifestyle creep, that hits people as they start making more money and, the wife's spending more, the husband's spending more because their income's gone up. I think more with like the timing in and out is there's a ton of data out there that talks about trying to time the market just doesn't work, right? Because you got to time it right twice. You got to time it right on the getting out of the market. You got to time it right getting back into the market. And it's very, very hard to do both things. If I go back to, 2008, 2009, which is, hopefully one of the worst markets we'll ever go through in our lifetime. I think of one client that I had, and I don't know, if you were investing back then, but it was a very, very scary time. I mean, markets were dropping. You didn't know what was going to happen. Banks were failing. All the big banks were failing. And I had one client in December of 2008. He, called me. I was like, look, I know we got a game plan. I know what we're doing, but I just can't take this anymore. We're down 40% on the market. Bonds were down. I don't remember what bonds were down 10, 15%. And I just don't want to lose anymore. Let's just reduce my risk. Okay. And he was right because the market dropped from December to March of 2009, about another 25, 30%. We're down, I think at the lowest point, down 67% on the S&P 500 before we started to recover. So he was right. Okay. He got out in December, market lost another 25, 26%. He didn't get back in though in the market till I think it was like June or July of 2009. So he missed that snap rally that happened from March to June or July, where my clients have stuck to the game plan, made little changes here and there, even though the market was the worst market we've seen in, at that point, 75 years. Most of them got back even within 2.5, 3 years, so they recouped their loss in 2.5, 3 years. That client who took it out in December, didn't get back in until June or July. He only took out 30% of his stocks. So he only dropped his stock position by 30%. He didn't get back even until almost 9 years later. So that's a 6 years difference of loss that you have by just being wrong on trying to time the market.
And it's an awful thing, you guys, when you guys are trying to piecemeal and say, no, I believe in, whatever it is. And then you want to take your money out. I remember being in undergrad, and this is early 2000s. I graduated in 1999 in high school. And so that gives you, my hairline, I've earned it. Yours is much better. And you're older, but I remember going to a wealth investor and I wanted to get into XM radio, and him telling me you shouldn't do that because, one, you don't have any real money. But you couldn't tell me that. I had a stack of money. I had my business, and he's like, you don't want to put all that. I have clients who could blow that money, and this is before they merged. So I didn't put as much in, but I put enough in, and I just did it myself. But I don't try to time the market down. I am from Oakland, California. I'm a Raider fan. We're going to fumble in the third quarter a few times. So it's like, no, let me go with what, the OGs are saying. But with that, Why do you think people are smarter than they think they are, and they could even beat your predictions or what you've done for, hundreds, if not thousands of people in 20 years, and they think they have a better way because they can maybe spell Bitcoin?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it comes down to just, greed, right? We see the hot, shiny object and we get what we look at like past returns and we project them out to future returns, right? So one of the things I deal with all the time is, we'll look at a hot stock that's, like a SanDisk or a Micron that's, up like 200% in the last year. And what do I get calls for? It's like, hey, should we add any SanDisk or Micron or NVIDIA when, it's already moved up, right? And so they can be right once and it could continue to go up, but they started trying to buy the stocks that have already moved. And it in their mind is like, okay, it's going to move another 200%, or it's going to keep going up. And so they don't want to see diversification. They see that 200% return and they don't want the 10-12% return that the market did. And so I don't necessarily think they think it's smarter. I think it's just that greed factor we get is like, oh, I want some of that. Like, I feel like I'm missing out on that return by not buying that stock. And so it's more of a fear of missing out than I think anything else.
Okay, so you guys stop your FOMO and stop you had mentioned, kind of the husband wants this, the wife wants that. That hedonic treadmill is something else. Get the new house, the wife has to have the new furniture, y'all.
Yeah.
And then everything else creeps into that. And then you got more tools than you know what you're doing, and different type of toys. Have you, what ways are you able to help the masses out? Maybe you have a community give back. I ask everybody what their community give back is, and it can be your social media or something else you do in the community. I know animals is a big thing for you with the family, but what are you doing, outside of the animals with people as a give back, maybe to give some education, because wisdom is at an all-time low.
Yep. Yeah, we do what it's been more recent here recently, that we've been doing more of this, but we've got a lot of college kids that come to us, that just want to talk about investing, what to do with their career path, right? So it's like, hey, I'm graduated from college. I don't know what to look at in the job market. How'd you get started? What'd you do? Is there anybody we should be talking to? So we've done a lot of that recently, with a lot of, college grads or recent college grads, just kind of doing some career consulting and just teaching them a little bit about investing, getting started investing versus, getting that first paycheck and it all goes to the bar for the weekend, right? It's like, maybe take a little bit out and just start putting it aside, a Roth IRA or do something. And the more you start early, this is what can happen over a period of time. So we've done that a lot recently. We've done some, which isn't really a lot of investing. We've done the community food bank where our team has gone down and packaged food for the community food bank. We have put out there some information on social media about just investing, what to look for, like it's just in general investing news, right? And on what to look for in the markets and how you do this and how you do estate planning and what should we be doing for tax season. So we try to get as much out as possible. We do a lot of stuff with client kids, their kids, and talk to them like, hey, this is what your parents have done, and this is, you're going through school. Let's teach you about money from an early age. So, when you inherit this money or your parents are gifting you money, you don't blow it, right? So we try to do a lot more with the younger generation and try to help them out.
Hello, everyone. Come along with London and Sydney as they show you around the vibrant country of Cameroon. Explore the heart of Africa through the eyes of London and Sydney. Two explorers who journey across the great city of Yaoundé, exploring its rich culture, vibrant market squares, cultural heritage, and wildlife. With giggles and excitement, London and Sydney Explore Cameroon takes you on a fun-filled adventure, providing insight into the country's culture and traditions through the pages of this book. It's packed with exciting stories and super cool facts about Cameroon that will make you go, wow. Get your copy now, available on Amazon and in libraries near you. There's only one easy way to experience the exploration of Cameroon, and it's through London and Sydney. Don't wait, get yours.
And wow, you talked about the inheritance. Dave Ramsey talks about, hey, tell your people now when they're at of age to understand. The Morgan and Morgan owner has talked about he's taking care of his grandkids. After that, hey, they're on their own. What do you think is a healthy, because you've probably seen a couple fortunes, maybe even worked with some blue bloods and seen that, in the words of Lauryn Hill, money changed the situation. Shun. Like, money is one of those things at the funeral. My goodness, the first one to speak, that's the one who really wants to know what's in that will first. Now, I'm just convinced of that doing enough funerals, unfortunately. But what do you think we need to be telling our kids, and even, when folks have grandkids with the money? Because this is going to be like a John Grisham movie sometimes. I'm going to watch Prime Time where people are trying to, knock people off beforehand because they want to get that money.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's all communication. I mean, you got to communicate with your kids. Obviously it starts with the estate plan. You got to build your estate plan. You got to have, as the person with the money, you got to understand yourself what you want to do with it, right? Because I got some clients who will not give it to their kids. They don't want to give it to their kids. They want to make sure the kids are, taken care of, that, maybe put aside a little bit of money for the kids, grandkids, 529 plans. But there's like, look, I raised them, I put them through school, and I'm going to spend all my money that I can. And if they get something left, great. If not, whatever. I think that can leave some hard feelings at time for some of the kids, thinking like, well, heck, you have all this money and you're not going to leave me anything to help me out. And so when I talk to clients about the situation, like, I think that's a fine strategy. There's nothing wrong with doing that. It's your money. I just think you need to communicate with your kids, sit down and talk to them about, this is what we plan on doing. This is why we're doing this. And same thing with the clients who have a lot of money and they want to, gift that next generation and the generation after that to make sure they're taken care of. You need to talk to them about, what access will they have to that money? Will it be right away, when they're younger or when they get older? What's your goals for that money? Do you want it to go to charity as well too? And you want your kids to maybe sit on a charitable foundation and as a family start thinking about giving money to different charities, and just really talk to them like, this is what we're going to potentially give you. What are your plans with it? Fortunately, if you raise the kids right, they're not going to go through and blow the money. But, I do have one client whose son has, had issues with addiction, right? So they're a successful family. They're going to be giving money to the kids, and they're worried about how the son's going to react when he receives this money and he's got addiction problems. So how do you handle that? Well, you probably have to put a fiduciary in place over the top of it to make sure that person doesn't have access to, $1 million all at once and destroys his life. So communication's key, and a plan's key.
Definitely. I'm actually doing a second master's right now, and it's in MSW because I like to be a licensed therapist. Because I said I'm tired of dealing with clients who they have more money than they need. They don't know what to do with it, but the real issue is in the mind, and a lot of times it starts from childhood and what they have gone through that. And so I said, I used to do counseling many moons ago, drug counseling and all type of psych ward. And so I said, let me get the best information. But I could definitely see myself helping with that, because money doesn't move me. There's almost so much that I want. And if I get too much, I told my wife, I'm gonna buy this whole block. We're all gonna have the Michael Jackson dimple. We're all gonna. I'm just gonna go off the rails, and it's just gonna be a different thing. So money doesn't move me in that way, and the reason why I can say no to a lot of deals. But what do you think about as Bill Perkins would say, dying with zero in his book? Is that something that more of us should think about, instead of trying to spoil kids who are already spoiled? If you live in this country, 9 out of 10 times you're spoiled. I don't care where you're coming from. You're spoiled. You got internet at Starbucks. You can go build an app there. But what do you think about dying with zero? Because as someone who believes in the scriptures, I'm like, I'm supposed to leave an inheritance. How can I spend it all on me?
Yeah. Well, it's tough, right? Because it's your kid. You want to take care of them. But, I look at, my situation where, I grew up, wanting, right? And so I worked hard to build my business, my career. And, I remember going to college after I lost, I was done playing sports. I didn't have my football scholarship anymore. And I worked 45 hours a week and took 18 hours of classes, of whatever is a week to graduate with no debt, because I didn't want to be in debt when I got out of college. And so, and I wanted to get my college degree, and I worked hard. And you look at the kids now and they're like in my house, they're soft, right? They don't have that same work ethic what I had to where, I was playing sports and working at the grocery store and trying to put money aside for my car and pay for insurance and gas and wanting to build myself out of the situation. And actually the situation, it wasn't a bad situation, but so I wanted more of my life. And so you look at it now and it's like everything's kind of given to them. I paid for my daughter's car. I'm paying for her, put money into a Roth IRA. I'm paying for her college and she doesn't want for anything. And if she can have that work ethic when she gets out of college to go out and get it on her own, I worry about stuff like that. And then, you think about the amount of wealth you're building up and it's going to go to the kids and inherit it. Are they going to depend on that money to live on because they're not working hard? So I think there's definitely some merit to that, die with zero. But in the same regard, like you're talking about, it's like, I want to make sure my kids are better off than I am, and I want to leave them something. And so I think you got to kind of, live your life, plan your retirement, live how you want to live during retirement, and try to give something to the next generation if you can. But I totally understand where people come from when they say, I've taken care of these kids. They're on their own. They need to work on their own to build what they need for their family.
Awesome, awesome. And again, that you guys go check that book out. And then my next question, with books like Wealth 3.0 by Dennis and James, please, before you publish your book, let us know what other books and what other planning people can get. Because what a lot of people, and I know you've heard this 1,000 times, well, nobody ever told us. And it's like, well, no one ever told you where the Budweiser was or where, whatever vice you have, but you found it, on a Friday night at midnight. So you seek for what you want to find. But what other books and any conferences or events could you tell people, especially those who are winning and they say, look, I'm putting money in my 401k. I'm good. What else do I need to do? And there's plenty you need to do. You just don't know about it yet.
Yeah, the one book I read here recently that I thought was great was a Morgan Housel book, Psychology of Money. It's a very simple read. It doesn't take that long. And I think there's a lot of things in there that I don't agree with. But the concept of how people view money and they treat money it's a really good book, and it makes you think about a lot of things, and so that book I always try to recommend to my clients, like, especially, when they ask about like, what should I give to the kids and to read? And, that one I think is a great book. The other one I always like too, because it's simple and it's an old one, is The Richest Man in Babylon. It's just talking about, hey, if you've got cash flow and you're making more than what you're spending and you're always keeping that, that's what wealth is, if you're is positive cash flow. And that's a really simple one. But it's a quick read too. I think it's great. The other ones, I look at, like, they're probably a little bit more in depth than what I would give to a client to read. I did read one the other day for a client that was retiring, and I gave it to some of my clients as gifts when they retired, called the Retirement Mentality, which talks about, when you retire, your identity was your job, right? So for 30 years, you were a pilot, or you were this, or you were that, and then you retire, and all of a sudden you're not that anymore. And how do you live now as a retired person? What's your hobbies? What do you do to stay active? And, how do you treat money now that you're retired? And that was a good one for people who are retiring, called The Retirement Mentality. But other than that, the old Peter Lynch book is great. The Warren Buffett books, I think, are a little bit too complicated. There's ones that summarize it, I think, that are good. But the first one I'd go to is The Psychology of Money. I think that's a great one. His newest one he came out with, I can't think of the name of it. I didn't think was as good as The Psychology of Money, Morgan Housel's new book. But if you want a good book to just think about money, I'd start with that one.
And who wrote the retirement
Oh
mentality?
gosh, I don't remember his name. I found it. A client actually sent it to me, and then I bought a few on Amazon. I had to look at it, but it's just called The Retirement Mentality. You can find it on Amazon. But I don't remember the guy's name. I'd have to find it.
Okay, because we're looking, and I see the new Retirement Mentality by Mitch Anthony, and I'm like, and I've had Alan Weiss, who has written more books on consulting than anybody. But Alan talks about, people say you always say the same thing, but when you think about it, it works, first of all. These guys have made millions. Tony, Robbins, Les Brown, all these people. Yeah, they stick on the same topic. Most people do, just like your politricians. They say the same thing with their thumb out, and we're supposed to believe them. But this is what, I always say, like George Carlin, they're as smart as the people, and we get the politricians that we're supposed to get. But that's good. The Psychology of Money, you guys listening, if you've been here for a while, you should know that one. Talks about your behavior. I got a certified financial social work certificate before doing the second master's, and all of it is just about how you look at money and how it was placed to you. Did you have a piggy bank as a kid, or did your mother rob your piggy bank as a kid? Can really put a lot on you, as an adult. So I love that. Any plans on maybe a book, speaking tour, any of that for yourself?
Yeah, I'm not a very good wordsmith, so I don't see a book in my future. I'm a numbers guy. English isn't the best. Writing a book's probably not my future. No, I think for the most part, we're building a great little company out here in San Diego. We've got, when I started Sea Point Wealth 5 years ago, it's myself and my assistant, just the two of us, and we've now grown to 7 advisors and 2 staff. And I think this summer we'll probably be adding at least 3 more advisors and a couple more staff. So, that's kind of keeping me busy at this point. Is growing the business and bringing on new clients and making sure we're taking care of our people. So probably don't see any books or speaking tours in my future.
Well, now that everybody's a vibe coder in the apps and vibe writers, even in their books, some of it good, some of it okay. Do not despise the AI helping you, because your book, to be able to stay married, have kids, that's a great thing in itself. And a lot of people are like, well, how do you and your wife work together? I say, oh man, if you stay here long enough, you're going to hear an argument or a discussion, as we call it. If you stay here long enough, I'm going to do something. I'm going to take extreme ownership like Jocko wrote. It's all on me. I am the one, but she knew what she was marrying, and that she was marrying part-time crazy. So there's a book even in just that. Just to throw it out there, because you don't have to be a wordsmith anymore, but everybody has at least one story to leave their family and say, this is who we were, or a movie, just filter yourself all day. Right. Yeah. I know you are actually pro Bitcoin. I'm more of I like Bitcoin mining. Back in the day when we were told, hey, are you guys criminals? Like, what are you guys doing on that computer? So I don't know anything about buying a cryptocurrency, and I'm from the school of Arthur Hayes, where I'll get out of this country and let everything go. And y'all say crypto, what's that? But what do you think about crypto right now? Because people say, oh, it's going to change money forever. And they don't even know, like, they can not even spell crypto, right?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say I'm pro crypto. I think it's interesting. It's one of those things I just don't understand how to value it. And so I've got some friends that are, into crypto. They love crypto. They think it's, like you said, changing the way we see money and do transactions. My problem with crypto is when I look at a stock, there's earnings to it, right? So I can look at the earnings and look at the current price, and I can project out whether it's cheap or expensive. With crypto, there's no earnings, and it's all about what you want to pay for it versus what I want to pay for it. And so I don't know if it should be worth, $50,000 a coin or $250,000 a coin, because there's no earnings, just demand. And so I've got clients that ask about it a lot. I tell them it's like, it's one of those things where it's an interesting concept. It's a way to kind of subvert the banking system and send money without, transactions. But I don't know how to value the price of crypto. And so, and you can't use it as cash, because it's supposed to replace the dollar, right? But you can have a currency that when you walk out the door, you can buy a car with that coin. And by the time you get to the dealership, you can buy half a car or 2 cars, right? So the price is fluctuating so much. I had an economist I work with who was telling a story about Bitcoin, because everybody asked him the same question. And he said the same thing I just said, I don't know what it's worth. He goes, but this guy's very successful, bought a big ranch in Colorado, and he was buying sprinkler systems for his property. And because he had a large property, the best sprinkler system he was looking for was out of Turkey. And he goes, so for me, when I had to buy that system out of Turkey, he goes, the guy took Bitcoin. So the price of Bitcoin for me was worth one sprinkler system. So I was able to go out there, buy Bitcoin, transfer it to the guy in Turkey. He got the Bitcoin, through the digital economy, sent me my landscape, whatever he needed for his landscape irrigation system. And that's to me what the value of Bitcoin was. It made the transaction very seamless, very easy to do, protected. I was protected, the guy was protected. And that was very useful for me in the Bitcoin world. He goes, but when I look at the price and what it's worth, he goes, I don't know how to value it. And I know people talk about the fact that, it's a hedge against inflation. Well, we had inflation, Bitcoin didn't really go up. And so when I tell people to look at the price of Bitcoin, I almost treat it like a tech stock, because if you watch Bitcoin, it kind of tracks what the tech market's doing. And so if you want to invest it, think of it not as like a currency or a coin, think of it as a technology that you're investing in, and it's like a stock. And that's how I kind of look at it.
Ready to dominate your industry with strategy that actually scales? At Coleman Public Relations and Consulting Firm, we're not just PR experts, we're licensed sports agents certified in AI and elite business consultants with over 2 decades of experience leading global projects across multiple countries. Visit cprfirm.com, that's colemanprfirm.com, and millionairex.ai. Then download the Millionaire X app, your AI-powered guide to getting out of debt, investing smarter, and building generational wealth. Coleman Public Relations and Consulting Firm. It's a family business. It's different.
Okay, well, thank you for clearing that up. I saw only a short of an interview you did recently, and it sounded like, with the guy and you were talking about, so you can only get so much from a short. But, because I look at crypto kind of as a plan B now. I know now with the laws changing, especially recently, now you can look at it differently. But I just remember when, there's only a few times in the world where they have accused me of trying to do something like I was getting over. And I'm like, I'm not getting over. There is no Amazon at this time. There's only one way to buy something if it's not on East Bay. If some of y'all can remember East Bay magazine, and this is one way to get something delivered to Ottawa, Kansas at Ottawa University, or in Grambling State University. By then Amazon, I guess, had kicked up. But so I just like to make that clear, because I see it as a way to buy things. But when you are in Africa, or if you're in South America, it's definitely a currency when they only allow you to pull out $80 a day. When I'm in Sierra Leone, that's the max you can do without going to the bank. So if you want to buy something bigger, crypto, it works. So there's a need, but again, I'm in Florida, from California, the most shallowest places. Sorry, New York, I'm not putting you guys in this, but and enough for you are here. But people will just tell you, like, who just got out their mother's basement, what you should be doing with your money. I have 20-year-olds saying, well, you could have just borrowed against that. And I'm like, I'm a student of Dave Ramsey. I don't have to borrow money, so I don't. And if I did, it surely wouldn't be from you or you or you. I'm a part of Florida Funders, a very small member, but I got VC I could go get money from. And I've turned down millions of dollars for things because I don't want to be owned by anybody. I love being free, love being me. So that's that. You guys, I'd love for you to get some financial advice, but I want you to go to his website. I don't want him to say, hey, I got a new stock tip, because he's a professional and you got to pay for that. But let the people know, any last words. And if it's not a book, maybe you said you're not a wordsmith, but I could see a podcast. You could do a podcast, even if it's monthly, you could do a podcast easily. But give us like any last words and, inspiration, please.
Yeah, well, 4 kids, 3 kids in competitive soccer, baseball, flag football, basketball. It's hard to have time for a podcast. My kids keep me busy, but I think, words of inspiration, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to be successful in investing. It's just, you need time, right? The time in the market is more important than trying to time the market, is the old saying. And that's what I think for most people is, if you get started early, you pay yourself first, that old Dave Ramsey thing, right? You pay yourself first. You treat your investing like a bill. Like, here's my bill for the month. I'm going to pay my IRA, my 401k, my Roth, whatever it is, and putting money aside for retirement. and then sticking to a disciplined plan, and don't try to move things around too much. Keep it simple. Um, that's how most people are successful with investing. Is not picking the right stock or picking the right fund. It's just staying disciplined in your savings, and making sure you plan for a long time. These assets grow over time. You look back 5-10 years from now, you're like, oh my gosh, this little bit of savings I did today is worth a lot now. And so I think that's the most important thing for people to think about when they're investing is, it's not the hot item. Just stick to the basics and you'll be fine.
Well, I hope they hear you. And you guys, if I need to put this in any other type of, language or something, let me know. Because Chad, I don't know if you know this, but I have friends, they're doing well for themselves, clients, they're doing well for themselves. But I have even real brother type friends, and they're like, I know you're talking about Fidelity and Vanguard and all that, but I believe in Facebook ads. That's what I've been investing in. It has me living in this big high rise, and of course they don't have kids or responsibilities, right? But it's like, you just know that's going to end. And I look at this like the crack epidemic in the 80s. If you don't fix this now, it's going to spread. And now we see fentanyl in every type of neighborhood. And, we have to worry about, will it be in our food because of who's packaging the food or who's cooking the food? So it's really, if we're going to stay a country and not blow up, we got to take care of the least of these people. That's why we do conversations like these. That's why we're going to try to, pressure Chad. We hope he stays up night and says, you know what? I got to write. I got to write. I got to write like I'm running out of time, like Hamilton, right? I just thank you. I thank you for that time. And if that's that, you guys have gotten the game. Make sure you comment, make sure you like, but most importantly, you guys, can you make sure you share this with somebody? It will change their life. This is game you can use. Be blessed.
Are you tired of the rat race in America? Are you ready to visit the motherland to relax and rejuvenate? Are you ready to explore all that Africa has to offer? Then check out the brand new Diversified Game Academy course, Prepare for My First Trip to Africa. Are you worried about being able to afford the trip? We got you. We will show you how to travel either on a budget or as a baller. Learn how to stress the value of the USD. Did you know that 100 United States dollars is worth over 1,000 South African rand, or 10,000 Kenyan shillings, or 54,250 West African CFA? Are you worried about taking your kids? Get the game from Kellen Cash, a bona fide world traveler, having traveled to almost 20 countries, several of those in Africa. Get the game on taking your kids on their first trips. Learn how to find the best tickets, get the visas, and plan your own adventures in Africa. Don't let Eddie Murphy have all the fun. Plan your own coming to Africa trip starring you, produced by you, and featuring you. If you are ready for a life-changing experience, sign up for our course today, Diversified Game Academy. Get prepared and purchase at diversifiedgame.com.